Good morning and welcome to Faith Family Sunday morning Bible study. We're doing Bible 101. This is episode 11, Nehemiah. Basically what we're doing is we're going through all of the books of the Bible. As you see, they're broken down here into the books of the Pentateuch, historical books, prophetic books, and poetic books. We are currently and then the New Testament, we'll get to that when we get to the New Testament. So, but we are right here in the historical books, Nehemiah. We only have Nehemiah and Esther left to go in the historical books. So, with that said, let's go ahead and start with Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 1 starts out with the introduction. It doesn't say so, it says, when I was in the capital of Susa. But we know that this is Nehemiah speaking. And he was in the capital of Susa, which is the winter palace of the Persian kings. So, give you an idea of that. Right here, you can see where Susa is, and you can see where Babylonia is, or Babylon is. And you see the Medes, the Persians, the Parthians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Sumerians. So that is the New Testament, or the Old Testament villains, if you will, of the Bible. So, but you can see Susa and is just almost directly east of Babylon, and like I said, that was the winter home, or the winter capital, as Nehemiah calls it, for the Persian kings. So in the first chapter, it's just kind of basic. This is who I am, and this is what I've done. Nehemiah was actually the cupbearer for King Artaxerxes, and that let's see. So he was a cupbearer, and he goes to Artaxerxes, and Artaxerxes makes him the governor of Jerusalem and sends him back to Jerusalem. Also in chapter 2, we see that Nehemiah inspects the wall, because he's not only going back to govern, but he's going to fortify Jerusalem once again. And then the decision at the end of chapter 2 is that he will rebuild the wall and to protect the people of Israel. Okay. So again, there's where Babylon is, and that's where Susa is. And then just to give you an idea, you can see where Susa is in comparison to Babylon, and then way over here is Jerusalem. So they were taken pretty far away. Now, what happens is in Nehemiah is still over here in captivity, while Ezra, we just finished Ezra, so you know Ezra come over and he kind of basically set up the worship system and got people ready for that. And they kind of overlap near the end. But in the beginning, Ezra has already gone over there. Nehemiah follows him over, and Ezra starts the building of the temple, and Nehemiah comes and he's going to build the wall around all of Jerusalem. So in chapter 3, we get to where the organization of the work. This is a very what would you say, boring chapter. It just basically says who is going to build what part of the wall and what they're going to do. So this is a kind of a long chapter, and all it is a bunch of name after name after name, and where part of the wall that they built. Chapter 4. There is some hostility to them building the wall. We have the army of the Sumerians. They come and they threaten the rebuilding of the wall. Basically, what it happens is Nehemiah has the workers divide up, and 50% of them work, while the other half, 50%, guard to make sure they're not attacked while they're working. Not only this, but the workers that are working only work with one hand, and the other one always keep a weapon in the other hand. So they're building a wall with one hand, and the other hand is having a weapon in case they're attacked. Now this is kind of apropos with how David was supposed to choose his warriors. He said David was to choose his warriors for the people that went down and quote, lap the water like dogs. In other words, the people that went down and held their sword in one hand and scooped the water up like that with their other hand, because they were always ready for battle. And so this kind of gives you another idea that they were ready for battle. These were true warriors. So chapter 4, the building of the wall begins. In chapter 5, the officials that were there, that were set up before Nehemiah comes, they're kind of oppressing the people that have come back. They're charging them more taxes because they're still paying tribute to the king. And so basically they're giving them higher taxes than the people that were already there. And you got new people coming in, so you tax them because they don't know any better. But Nehemiah, he sees this, and he reminds the people of the law that says do not charge interest to your brother. So basically he gets them to stop this. And then the officials also give back the land to the people that were already that were there before they left. Now the Jews have a thing called the Jubilee, which is every 50 years. Even if you sell your land to someone, you don't really sell it permanently, but after 50 years, it's supposed to come back to you. And so every 50 years, this is supposed to happen. There's no record of it ever happening. But in light of that, I think that this is one of the things that they're trying to promote at this point. And so the officials are giving the land back to their original families. And Nehemiah uses what he called this Nehemiah's generosity. Nehemiah was still getting food supplies or allowances from King Artaxerxes, and what he would do with that food supply is he would distribute it amongst his people. And so he was like getting bounty from Artaxerxes for being the judge, the governor of the area now, and he would divvy that up amongst the people. So that's chapter 5. In chapter 6, Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem, the Arab, plot to kill Nehemiah because he's doing all this stuff and he's the new governor, and they're going to overthrow him, and they're going to make themselves the governors of the area. And so they try to lure him out, and they say, "Come and talk to us at this place." And he knows that they're not going to talk to him. They're just luring him out there to basically try to kill him. And so he says, "I'm busy building a wall." And so he never goes out to them. And so they send a prophet in, and the prophet says, "Oh, they're going to kill you. Let us go and seek refuge in the temple." And basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to make him look bad. Oh, he's afraid. He's cowering in the temple. But Nehemiah's wise to this, and he doesn't go. And he basically relies on the men that are building the wall and those that are guarding the wall. And he continues, and by the end of chapter 6, the wall is completed. So, now I'm not sure if you understand, this is a pretty exciting time. I mean, they've been gone in captivity. They're coming back to their home, their homeland, and they're rebuilding something that was completely destroyed. The temple, the big and beautiful temple, is completely knocked down. The walls have been torn down, and it says they're burnt. The rocks that they're rebuilding the wall with are actually charred from being burnt when they pulled them down. And so this is a big new beginning for the Israelites and Jerusalem and the Jews. So although it's exciting, you get to places like chapter 7 where it's a list of those that are returning from exile, all the different families and their genealogies. And again, this gets kind of boring, but this is kind of interesting because you can look at this and then you can go back and you can look at Ezra and you can kind of compare the list of who came back. And but anyway, that's chapter 7, long chapter again, not very interesting, just unless you like looking at genealogies and lists of names. So go on to chapter 8. In chapter 8, Ezra comes in and he summons the people to obey the law. He brings out the law and he reads the law to the people, and he encourages the people to once again obey the law of Moses as their ancestors did before the captivity. And then they celebrate, of course, the Festival of Booths. The Festival of Booths, or the Booth celebration, is to represent the wandering in the desert. When they left Egypt, the Israelites were in captivity in Egypt, and they left Egypt and they lived in tents, basically. So that's kind of the Festival of Booths, or the Festival of Tents. You set up a tent and you lived in the tent outside to kind of commemorate the being freed from the Egyptian captivity. And now they're free from their Babylonian and Persian captivity, and the first thing that they do is they celebrate the Festival of Booths. So that's kind of interesting. If you want to see more about that, that's in Leviticus 23, where Moses actually tells them to celebrate this. And then again, this is the first time that they're doing a celebration like this since they went into captivity. So big, joyous time, great things happening. We're once again worshiping the way our ancestors did before we were hauled off into captivity. Chapter 9, Ezra gathers the people together and he has a national confession. In other words, they gather them together and they say all the things that they've done wrong against God, and basically say, we are wrong, forgive us, and we know we should not have done these things. Now, what's interesting is, this is in Ezra 9, there's this confession also. It's a national confession about how they took foreign wives and they intermingled with them. And so that was another confession, but I thought that was interesting that they're both in chapter 9 of Ezra and chapter 9 in Nehemiah. And again, Ezra is the one that leads the people. He's the spiritual leader of the people at this time. This is a nice chapter in understanding the ways that the Jews look at their history, though. They look at their history like, we were God's people, chosen people, and then we sinned against God, and God let us be punished. And we're repented of that, and we come back to God, and God let us be ourselves, and we did not obey God, and God let us be punished again. So there's a pattern of that, and part of the confession is talking about the history. So if you want to see what they feel the history of their nation was, then turn to chapter 9 in Nehemiah, and you can see what Ezra says about their history and how they came to be where they are at this point. Chapter 10, another one of those lists of families. These are the ones that signed the covenant to again obey God's law. Basically, they had them come and sign this, pledge themselves to obeying to God's law. These are, of course, the laws that came from Moses through the Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and while they were wandering in the desert. So, and then there's a small summary of the covenant, and then a little part where it says who will supply what for the temple. So chapter 10, again, it's not very exciting, but at the same time, it kind of tells what the covenant is and reminds the people, and then it tells who's going to supply what for the temple. Chapter 11 is a list of people again. This time, who would settle in the cities around Jerusalem? In other words, the cities of Judah and Israel, where the people are going to settle. And also, they made a list of people that would settle in the cities surrounding Jerusalem. Now, this is important because you got to remember, the people that far off are more farmers, and the closer to Jerusalem you get, these are going to be the people that are who are going to be left to defend the city of Jerusalem if they're ever attacked again. And as you can see, that's why they're building the wall and being prepared in case this happens again. So this is a list of all those people and where they're going to live in and around Jerusalem. Chapter 12 is a list of the Levites and the dedication of the wall and the temple responsibilities. Okay, the first part is the list of the priests and Levites. This is almost just like back in Ezra when they list the priests that are going to take over. Here it's just kind of said again, and these are the priests and the Levites and the people that will run the temple and run the temple system. At the same time, right after that, they dedicate the wall around the whole city of Jerusalem, and then they list who has what in the temple responsibilities. So they appoint the different families to do different jobs in the temple system. And then finally, we get to chapter 13, the last chapter, where once again, just like in Ezra, the foreign people that live in the land, they're separated from the people of Israel. Nehemiah starts some reforms to make sure that the people are once again living by the laws of the Bible, the laws of the Old Testament, the laws of Moses, and he reinforced the Sabbath reform. In other words, you are not supposed to work on the Sabbath. You don't do anything on the Sabbath. It's a day of rest. So he begins the reforms to make sure that's going on. And then finally, just like in Ezra, there's a discussion about mixing marriages, and this is condemned. In other words, the people of Israel are not supposed to be marrying the people that aren't Israel. And there's a little bit in there about whether or not these people are actually Israelites, because they can't find their genealogies. So they kind of, this is for the Levites, the priests lead it, but there's a part in there where basically they say, look, you're not Levites. We can't find any history of you, so you don't get to be part of the temple system. And they just kind of go and be your secular everyday people. So, but that's it. That's Nehemiah. Goes together. A lot of times you'll see them say Ezra and Nehemiah, because this is like Ezra comes over, he builds the temple. Nehemiah comes over right after him. He starts building the wall, and a lot of the things kind of overlap in the lists and everything like that. So that's Nehemiah. And next week we'll go over Esther. Esther, thank you. We'll go over Esther, and Esther's a story It's actually the only book in the Bible where God's name is not mentioned. And as Esther is actually going to stay in Persia, and so we'll talk about that next. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please email them to me, and I'll get with you, and we will we'll answer your questions best we can. All right. Have a blessed day.